Google runs the world's largest search engine, which means it's in the business of delivering information to its users on demand. In total contrast, the Chinese Communist Party maintains control over China by limiting information through widespread censorship and the suppression of ideas. So with these fundamentally opposed approaches to information and censorship, Google and China have been locked in a long and complicated history that ultimately resulted in the complete removal of Google's search engine from China. But in order to fully understand the complexity of the situation, we need to rewind to the early 1990s when the internet first arrived in China. At first, the Chinese government viewed the internet as an important tool for economic development and technological advancement. They realized that the internet would be necessary for growing the country's power and achieving their long-term ambitions. But there was another side to the internet that the Chinese Communist Party didn't like. As internet usage became more prevalent and served as a platform for the free flow of information throughout the country, the Chinese Communist Party began to grow concerned about its potential to disrupt and challenge their authority and rule. The Communist Party knew that if they didn't intervene in some way, that the internet would eventually become an existential threat that would topple their power. So in 1998, the Communist Party began development on the Golden Shield project. And as part of this project, work began on what's commonly referred to as the Great Firewall of China. The goal of the project was to create a sophisticated system of internet surveillance and censorship, allowing the government to filter and block access to specific websites and content deemed by the government to be hostile to the CCP and harmful to national security. But as you can imagine, the interpretation of what constitutes violations lies at the sole discretion of the Communist Party, and because of this, it can be exceptionally broad. If you want proof of that, look no further than the fact that Winnie the Pooh is famously censored in China after memes comparing CCP leader Xi Jinping to the cartoon bear first started circulating on the internet. The first iteration of the Great Firewall was eventually completed in 2006 and has extensive content filtering and blocking capabilities. The CCP employs a vast network of automated systems to monitor online activities. These systems scan and analyze keywords to identify and block prohibited content. Websites containing so-called sensitive topics, like human rights and democracy, are routinely blocked through tactics like URL filtering, DNS spoofing, and IP range bans. Most global social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are also inaccessible, and many informational sites like Wikipedia are as well. China also bankrolls a workforce of internet police to monitor online discussions, delete posts, and even manipulate public opinion by promoting pro-government propaganda. It's estimated that these paid Chinese actors create 450 million fake comments a year. And if all else fails, it's widely believed that the Chinese government has developed kill switch capabilities to block internet access entirely. Throughout the years, China's government has continuously focused on upgrading the Great Firewall to adapt to new technologies and communication platforms. The Chinese government has consistently worked to monitor and block specific types of traffic, such as encrypted connections and VPNs. It's to the point where the Chinese internet is so disconnected from the outside world that it's virtually unrecognizable compared to anything you or I would call the internet. And any foreign company that wants to operate in China is expected to play by these rules and keep the Communist Party's status quo. So foreign tech companies must navigate and help facilitate a complex web of censorship and surveillance. But back in 2006, Google was willing to do just that. And they took the plunge and entered China for the first time, eager to grow their business and tap into the world's largest population and emerging internet market. However, this Chinese version of a Google search engine was heavily censored and was specifically designed to comply with the Chinese government's policies. As you can imagine, this move drew widespread criticism from human rights activists and advocates of internet freedom, who accused Google of compromising their values for access to the Chinese market and its money. This controversy brought Chinese censorship right into the global spotlight. Google claimed at the time that while removing search results was inconsistent with their mission, providing no information at all in China would be even more inconsistent with that mission. The line of thinking they gave at the time was that some presence in China was better than no presence at all, and that by operating in the country, they might even be able to influence China's policies from within. And to give Google at least a little bit of credit here, when Chinese users searched for censored content on Google's Chinese search engine, they would see a disclaimer saying that some results had been removed. This public notification about internet censorship did not exist in Chinese search engines up to this point, and the Chinese Communist Party hated that Google did this. So as Google's market presence in China grew, so did the tensions with the Chinese government. Things finally came to a head in 2010 when Google announced a significant change in its stance towards China. The company disclosed that it had been the victim of a sophisticated cyber attack, dubbed Operation Aurora, which originated from within mainland China. The attack aimed to steal Google's intellectual property and to gain access to Gmail accounts of Chinese human rights activists. In response to this cyber attack from China, Google made a bold public announcement on its official blog. The company stated that they had uncovered evidence of a targeted attack on their corporate infrastructure originating from China, and that they were no longer willing to continue censoring search results in China as required by Chinese regulations. This move surprised and angered the Chinese Communist Party, who were blindsided by the announcement. They hadn't expected Google to publicly retaliate by drawing global attention to the censorship issue with this ultimatum. But despite all this pressure, the Chinese Communist Party refused to budge on the censorship issue, and made a bet that growing Chinese internet companies like Baidu could fill the void of Google's absence. So the CCP was fine with letting Google walk out the door, and they blocked Google after it began to offer unfiltered search results. And just a few years later in 2014, the Communist Party would go even further and also block some of the few remaining Google services left in the country, like Gmail and Google Maps. Since Google's very public falling out with China, the company has reportedly made some attempts to backtrack and make inroads back into the country as it pursues new opportunities for revenue. In 2018, leaked documents reported by The Intercept showed that Google was potentially planning to launch a new censored version of its search engine for China, codenamed Dragonfly, pending approval from the Chinese Communist Party. The anonymous source speaking to The Intercept about Project Dragonfly spoke out due to ethical concerns about Google participating in Chinese censorship, and how the project was being planned by a small group of top executives at Google with no public knowledge or scrutiny. The search engine was demonstrated to the Chinese government, but the project has reportedly been sidelined after internal conflict at Google and the aftermath of the public backlash from the original leak in the Intercept report. Google's complicated history with China reflects the complexities and dilemmas that arise when companies try to operate in China under communist rules and regulations. The Chinese market may be very large, but if companies want to operate in the country, they have to be complicit with the CCP's systemic abuse and censorship. And unfortunately, many companies are all too willing to make that choice for the sake of greater revenue and profits. The story of Google in China serves as a valuable reminder of the Chinese Communist Party's never-ending conflict with information and free speech, and the ethical compromises that companies make when operating in China. But be sure to let me know your thoughts about China and Google's history in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to the channel for more finance content. Thanks.